Hello, this is Erica Chamberlain Carroll, and it's Wednesday, May 5th, 2021, and I'm coming to you today because I wanted to pay tribute to the great Jacques D'Amboise. Jacques D'Amboise was born on July 28th, 1934, and he just passed away on May 2nd of 2021. So that's only 3 days ago. I just found out yesterday, May 4th, early in the morning, that he had passed away. My brother sent me word through another family member, and it didn't take long before I was shedding tears, really heartfelt tears. Mr. D'Amboise was a neighbor of ours. His and his family were neighbors of ours when we lived on West 71st Street. We used to live at 264 West 71st Street between Broadway and West End Avenue in Manhattan. And around the corner, for all practical purposes, is Lincoln Center. And Lincoln Center was one of the cultural epicenters of the city, and of course it was Mr. D'Amboise's place of work. And my mother, Lee Chamberlain, always spoke of him extremely respectfully. She never referred to him as Jacques. She always would say Mr. D'Amboise. And he's someone that I didn't know terribly well as a child. Of course, I was a child. The time that we were living on West 71st Street, we were in that house, in that brownstone, let me see, like 72, 73, 74, about then. And that was the time that my mother was involved in the electric company. That was her electric company period. She was doing that for the first 2 seasons. So, what am I trying to say? I'm just trying to say that I was a child. I couldn't have been more than 10, about 10 years old. Let's see, when we moved to the neighborhood, I was born in 63. So, in 71, I would have only been, 8 years old, So 8, 9, 10 years old. So he was an adult, right? And there was definitely, in those times, a kind of, I think probably more of a formality or more of a deference between children and adults. At least that's how I felt about it, unless, of course, they were intimate family friends. But I just remember his energy. I remember how buoyant he was. This was a happy man. I remember one time, must have been walking home down the block, and of course I'd always have to pass their house to get to our house, and it was just my habit as I passed their house to look and just look and see, if anyone was there. And one time I got to catch a glimpse of him as he was just going into his house, kind of bounding into his house. And I just caught a glimpse of the side of his face with an enormous smile on it, and, kind of his arm and his shoulder. So I could see this marin. He was very fond of wearing the white and blue striped shirt, that the sailors kind of made famous. And he was wearing a pair of jeans, and it was just a glimpse of him for a moment, but he just made me feel so good, just by seeing him, just by knowing that he was on our block. It was just wonderful to have someone so illustrious, so energetic, and so alive on our street. The other time I remember having a little bit of contact with him, because he was always working. If you examine his body of work and his involvement in the New York City Ballet from the time of his being, a principal dancer, and then, with George Balanchine, that was a very, very busy time and a very busy company. But he did take the time to be present at this Halloween party that he and his, wife, his family hosted for the kids on the block, because we would all play with each other. So I spent those years playing with Catherine, or Khaki as we used to call her, who grew up to be a wonderful dancer. And then her twin sister Charlotte. They were our age. Christopher and George were much older than we were, so we weren't running around and playing with them in the streets, after school. But because of that, and because of that relationship, and I'm now looking back on it now and knowing what I know about Mr. D'Amboise now, just his fondness for children and his understanding of how important play and imagination was for kids. So we filed into the sort of the basement or the garden level of the house that they lived in, and they had this whole setup for Halloween, like around the room. They sort of had these, you were supposed to be like blindfolded and then stick your hands in these different pots. So I remember sticking my hand in the first pot and someone whispering, "Those are intestines." It might have even been Mr. D'Amboise himself. And it was like, ew, and then, going to the next thing and hoping it was better. And then it was like, and these are eyeballs. Of course, the intestines was just, cold spaghetti. And then the eyeballs were peeled grapes and, so on and so forth. And then they had a bobbing for apples for us, and it was just wonderful. And that was the first time and really the only time I was ever in their house. But that's just to give you a little glimpse of what a fun loving person he was. My mother used to buy us season tickets to the ballet, so I was very fortunate. We were very fortunate to be blessed to be literally right around the corner. Well, for us, right around the corner, because Lincoln Center was on 66th Street and we lived on 71st Street. But really, all we had to do was either, walk down Broadway would be the easiest way to access the front of the building, the steps, and then there was the Philharmonic building, there was the Opera building, and of course there was the building that we were going to that had the beautiful and enormous Chagall painting. Enormous painting, suspended. So you would walk in and it would just be all glass, because, it was a modern design. I think it was built in, the 50s or the 60s, so it was considered to be a very modern design. And then just walk into this grand hall at the time that the great George Balanchine was doing the choreography. And so I got to see so many wonderful dancers, like doing Firebird and Jules, and we would also go see the American Ballet Theater as well. But we were very, very fond of the New York City Ballet because it had a kind of an energy and a verve to it that we really enjoyed so much. So Mr. D'Amboise is 86 years old. He's a contemporary, really, of my mother's. He was born in 1934. My mother was born in 1938. So really, they were just 4 years apart. And the other thing that I really appreciate about this generation of artists and people who were born in the 30s is their work ethic was bar none. And also the training that they received as they were coming up was so thorough. They were really proud of working at their craft. They were proud of being in the arts, and they were proud and energetic and wanted to contribute not only just for themselves, but for the community at large. I remember when Christopher D'Amboise became a member of the New York City Ballet, and I believe his debut ballet was Union Jack, and there was a fantastic picture of him on the cover of New York Times in full color, you know, kind of in mid-flight. And we were just so proud. We were like, Christopher, you know. And then, of course, when Mr. D'Amboise went on to establish the National Dance Institute and started bringing dance to public schools, you know, to children, to give them that opportunity to get in touch with the arts and get in touch with their own bodies and develop self-confidence and self-control and have fun. We were so proud. We were so proud. The 70s was a very dynamic time. It was still a time of, you know, kind of the aftermath and social repercussions of the 60s and the civil rights movement. And there were just so many artists who wanted to contribute to the equity in human society in America. So I just wanted to, because I know my mother, would feel the same way, is that we want to extend our sympathy and our condolences and our love to Mr. D'Amboise's remaining family members, to Charlotte, to Catherine, to Christopher, to George, to his grandchildren, and of course, to all members of the ballet community. We have lost a national treasure, a very, very bright star, and just a fun guy. Thank you for watching.